Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. Thank you for joining me again. Today I'm bringing you another very exciting episode, this one for very different reasons to the last with Mark, who I'm sure you'll all agree provided some valuable insights into the mind of a woodland photographer, into the mind of a creative, into the mind of a human being, and what led us to lives of creativity. So yeah, thank you for the feedback that we had on the last episode. I hope that today is going to bring you just as much enjoyment for, as I said, different reasons. Today I'm bringing you a conversation with Natalie Downes. Last year, around this time last year, I delivered a talk in a bookshop in Aberystwyth, and Natalie was in attendance. She loved my work. She loved the talk that I delivered and the workshop, and I remember Natalie well because she came to get involved in the workshop that I delivered after the talk, and she picked up the camera and she was very enthusiastic but didn't quite know how to work the thing. And it was a moment that I remember very well, actually, because around about a week after the talk I had an email in my inbox, and it was from Natalie. And she inquired about the potential of working with me on a one-to-one basis to learn how to take pictures. And not just that, but to learn how to maybe turn this into a lifestyle. And she loved that I was out there in the world and I was, putting my story out there and trying to make some changes. So yeah, we agreed on a 6-month program that we began back in March, and this is, it's coming to an end. We agreed to extend it slightly for various reasons, but yeah, we're coming to the end of our time, and I thought this would be a brilliant conversation because me and Natalie always get involved in the most interesting conversations when we spend a day together or an evening together on a one-to-one that we arrange, and we just have the most incredible conversations. She's had similar early life experiences that have led her to want to pick up her camera and start telling stories and try to make a change in the world. So we cover many bases, learning photography, how Natalie's vision has evolved and her voice is being developed, because she started out wanting to do one thing. She thought she wanted to do one thing, and then halfway through the program she realized, actually, this isn't me. And I kind of posed some questions to her and got her thinking about who she is. And creativity and photography, whatever it is that we're doing creatively, represents who we are as people. So we talk a little bit about that journey, and now here she is with the world at her feet and the knowledge of how to work the camera, and yeah, the rest is up to her now, and it's an exciting time for her. So we also talk about many other avenues: psychology, spirituality, and the idea of adversity shaping us as people, as creative people. And yeah, I'm sure that you're going to enjoy this conversation with Natalie Downes. So can you believe it's been nearly a year since we met in the bookshop?
Yeah, it's definitely been I think I can, because there's been so many changes in my life since then, that I do feel that actually this has been a bit of a... I hate to say the word journey. Yeah. But...
I say it all the time. I love it. Everything's a journey. Creative journey, spiritual journey, whatever you want to call it, I think, yeah.
Yeah, I just can't, for want of a better word. Yeah. I can't...
Why do you hate the word journey?
Well, it just sounds a bit HR-ish.
What does HR mean?
When you got it's that sort of human resources kind of where you're given sort of meaningless... and they'll say certain sound bites, things like, I hate the term reach out.
Oh, right.
Oh, she reached out to me.
I see.
No, she contacted me.
Oh, yeah. Makes sense.
You know what I mean? It's that, it sort of falls under those kind of where it's it's overused.
So we need another word for journey then. Path.
Yeah, that might fall under the same. But yeah, it's definitely been, there's been some pretty significant changes. So it has felt like, the time has gone.
Yeah. How do you feel like the Natalie of then differs to the Natalie of now? If you think back to a year ago. Were you still employed then, or were you just...
Yeah, no, I was still employed, but I originally left in end of 2020, and then I'd had a few months off, and I then came back on the bank, but that was always the plan. But then I went back on reduced hours. So that's what I was doing last year. It just gave me a bit more flexibility, but I was so desperate to get out completely, just make the cuts and do something else.
So what have been the biggest changes in yourself in that time? Having now found creativity, because you weren't creative in this sense with photography and art, I guess, before.
Well, I'm sort of I feel that I'm sort of in a very much an in-between stage, really, because I was desperate to leave, and I was desperately unhappy during that time. Now I'm much happier, but I feel that I'm in the starting grid, which is a start, because now I'm on the path. So and now I can see where I'm heading and what future I want for myself. But I'm still sort of waiting for that to happen.
You're still bushwhacking along the path, aren't you?
That's right. Exactly. Trying to make
make your own way, right?
Exactly.
But you feel like you're on the right path now.
I definitely feel that I'm definitely on the right path. I suppose it's very easy, I think, to swerve into why didn't I do this earlier, and why did I take the sensible option? But I think that's just the wrong way to look at things. I think people tend to have that sort of response that maybe why did they get it so wrong? And but I think that in actual fact, there is always a reason why. You can always find meaning, I think, in why things happen the way they did. And I can't say that, I feel that I made a lot of difference for a lot of children that were under my care that really needed that help. And when I was all fresh face and bushy tailed and really wanted to do well in the job that I was in, then actually I gave it my 100%. But I think that is sort of a mark of somebody that has my type of makeup.
In what sense? Drive and
I'm a bit of a. I've always sort of thought of myself as being a bit of a rocket. So I give it 110%, but I can only do it for a short amount of time, and then I get burnt out, and then I get a bit fed up of that. And I've always had lots of interests, and some have stuck around, and some have sort of died a bit of a death. And so I am somebody that needs lots of change. I think I've spoken before that I'm kind of at a high energy.
And you get bored easily, right?
And I do get bored quite easily, which is why I chose actually nursing in the first place, because you can do 110 things under that. You can do all sorts of different, and go to different countries, and that's what attracted me to that in the first place. That didn't happen, but I think it wasn't. I think I was looking at what it could offer me, but the actual job itself was hard graft, and I feel I got burnt out.
And the novelty wore off, right?
And then the novelty wore off, and then I went into health visiting, but actually that's quite a limited profession, because you can only do that when you lose your clinical skills a little bit, and that sort of thing. So, but then it, because of the way the NHS is going, we got desperately understaffed, and we could only. What we were doing was sort of, I don't know, it was like the little Dutch boy with his finger in the dam, You're not really making much of a difference.
So you want to make a
just
difference.
Waiting for the inevitable. Yes, that's like always. I think a lot of us have that in us. That you want your life to mean something, don't you?
Why do you think that is for you? I know we've mentioned before a little bit about adversity and struggles and childhood issues and things that have maybe made you feel differently and maybe, I guess, want to give back. And
yeah, definitely. I think that there something that I've always had in myself.
Yeah.
Where it was such a grim childhood. I mean, I've got happy memories.
Yeah,
I can't
sure.
say, and there's kids around the world that have had it far worse.
Yeah.
But it was grim. It was grim.
Yeah.
And for the large part, pretty miserable. So, yeah, there was that kind of need to redress that and make sure that the rest of my life was just going to be one big adventure, and that I was going to make most of it.
Yeah. I think there's a beauty in that, in taking those experiences and making a difference to somebody else through them, and whether that's a route your eyes going to take and your photography will take. I know you mentioned you have developed and found through the past 6 months a love of people and portraits.
Yeah.
So maybe that's a way of you kind of using all of that thing to tell somebody else's story as well as tell your own in some ways too.
Yeah, I think that as a subject, I think I've said it before, that sorry, excuse me.
Okay.
That as a subject, people are really interesting,
Yeah.
and I think that most people find that the human mind is a fascinating thing to behold.
Yeah.
Which is another reason why I love working with children. Because you see it forming, and you need to have a sort of an understanding of that.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I do sometimes look at adults and think, you
Yeah.
just haven't developed your
Yeah.
frontal cortex. That's your problem.
Once you know these things and you've learned a lot, you can't really go through life without trying to understand people, can you?
Exactly.
It's a bit of a, I don't know, I feel like it's one of the best things we possess, but also it's the worst, because sometimes I don't want to. I just want to, take them for what they are. But my little brain says, "Oh, they've done that because of this," and
Yeah.
like psychoanalyzing everything.
Yeah. It's hard. It's hard not to do that.
Yeah.
And I think some people are sort of, I don't know. Are you better than other people at? I mean, it's funny because if you remember when we were in Birmingham, actually looking at that wall, we totally read those paintings. The facial expressions of those paintings completely differently.
I think what did you see in the one? You saw anger and I saw sadness or something like that, wasn't it?
Yeah, we were mixing up the two.
It's really interesting, isn't it? How you can perceive, because you don't see the world as it is, you see it as you are, right?
Yeah.
In a lot of ways.
It reflects off. Yes, exactly. And I think I definitely, there's definitely a misunderstanding. People tend to think that they're seeing reality.
Yeah.
For what it is.
Yeah.
And they forget completely that they are looking through a prism of their own experiences.
Exactly. And a lot of the fuel for doing this with the podcast is to open up humans in a way that we get to see other sides of them, maybe the deeper sides of them that are kept hidden, because I feel like nobody who's ever known me has ever really known me.
Yeah.
In the same way that not that nobody, but I don't know exactly your life, but maybe there are people in your life who've never seen the other sides of Natalie. And what if we were all walking through life with this projection that everybody else is this perfect being with no flaws and no struggles and no adversity?
Yeah.
Then we're all just feeling like we're the odd ones out, right? And somebody said it to me once when I worked at the wholesalers before I took this path, and I was serving a customer in the shop, and he just made a passing comment about something about my eyes shining, but in like a way of, well, your eyes are still shining, almost as though you've never had any struggles. That was what he was implying. I can't remember the exact way the conversation went, but I told him, actually, you don't know the half of my life, so I don't think it's fair that you can make comments like that. And he kind of stood back and thought, maybe I don't know what this guy is perceiving himself to be, as well as as what he really is.
Yeah.
And the cogs in my mind have been ticking since that day, as well as many others. So that was one of the defining moments for me, where I thought, I don't want people having this projection of me, because then have I been living a lie in some ways? not a lie, but not a true reflection of who I am and what I've been through and what my life is.
Yeah, and we do get very good at hiding what we really think, and hiding what we're really feeling.
Yeah.
I remember thinking that as a child, if only people really knew how I was feeling.
Yeah.
Because you get very good at just sort of playing a role.
Sure.
And it's exactly when somebody, takes their own life.
Yeah.
And people around them had no idea.
Yeah.
Because they were just so happy-go-lucky.
I can think of one case in my school.
Oh gosh, really?
Yeah. Happiest guy you could have ever met. Always had the biggest smile on his face, and you thought he had this life that no trouble, no struggles, nothing. But then one day, I think in late 20s, that was it.
Yeah. It's heartbreaking. I mean, there was a video. I don't know who did it.
Yeah.
I think it might have been a mental health charity, but it was just giving you an idea, and it was the last, not photograph, it was a film of before that particular person took their own life.
Oh yeah.
And they were all playing with the children and big smiles, and and then a few days later decided to take their life.
We never know the truth, do we? And I think we need more understanding and empathy and patience with each other, don't we?
Yeah.
Hence, from my perspective, the love of nature and nature photography, because that's what's developed inside of me. And I feel like it allows people then to come onto something like this and bring themselves as well.
Yeah.
And not feel like judged or ridiculed or anything like that.
I think that's so important, because I think that's the crux of it. I think that people, for some reason, are so scared of being judged the wrong way.
Yeah.
And you do tend to find, I was talking to a friend a couple of weeks ago, and she was telling me that she's the same person with everybody, but her brother was saying that he would change his personality depending on who he's with. So he often wonders, if these two people in his life ever met, they would have two different ideas of who he was, because he was two different people.
I used to feel like I did the same thing when I was younger.
Yeah.
Especially through my teenage years, when I didn't really have this sense of identity that I do have now. And I'd have a few friendship groups, and I'd always be like thinking in the back of my mind, what if they come together, because I brought a different version of me to each group. I had one group in uni and one group in Welsh Ball back at home, and when they met, actually they didn't get on and there was some conflicts. But I thought, what made that happen, what made that develop? And it was actually an insecure sense of self, I think, that made me feel like I needed to more blend and change who I was. And I think the beauty of my own path has been that development of what you see now.
Yeah, just being yourself, because it's wonderful, and I think this is why people tend to have a small, really good quality. Maybe that's not the right word.
I've just realised you're sat in the sun, aren't you? Is that why you're kind of leaning out the way?
No, I'm just more comfortable.
All right.
Sorry. It's all right. Because it's only a small. You don't come across people that fit completely to you all the time. So the best friends are always the ones that give you complete room to just allow you to be your silly, stupid self and understand your sense of humour. And you can't get everybody to like you.
No way.
And so what?
Yeah. What difference are you making in the world then if you're pleasing everybody?
Yeah, what makes them so special? That, so, and it just takes so much effort and energy. You think, well, that could be spent on making myself happy.
Yeah, exactly,
So, you just have to sort of cut yourself a deal in the end. And just relax into yourself a little bit. But that just takes time. And I think also it's the way that you're also shaped, when you grow up, this kind of, it's people pleasing, isn't it? And I remember quite consciously thinking to myself, I'm so fed up of pleasing people. And then it felt so natural when I stopped doing that.
Do you feel like that's been a big difference in you, stepping out of employment, if you like, to now kind of going off and being a bit more independent and
yeah, I
being
think
able
it definitely is. I think people get stuck in the cage of employment.
Yeah.
Not to say that everybody feels like that. Some people absolutely love what they do.
Of course, yeah.
But the people who consistently moan and hate what they do, but they will stay in year in year out, is because of a lack of self-belief, And that's all it comes down to, because I think that was another very conscious thought of mine of, well, what makes them better than me? I'm just as smart and just as wily and just as charismatic as the next person. So if they could do it, I can do it.
Yeah.
I think, and I remember that being quite of course I can do it. With what I've done so far by myself.
And that was a thought, perhaps, when you saw me giving my talk in the bookshop then as well, do you think?
Oh, I was well on my journey by then.
Oh, right.
I said journey again. But what I have found is how things drop into your path at the right time when you allow it.
I was going to say, because that was one of my, it's like and I don't want to refer to myself as a master, but it's that when the student is ready, master appears kind of thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's certainly perhaps what it felt like, because I was going to ask you, what made you go to that event at the bookshop?
Well, I had made up my mind that I was going to follow what I was passionate about, and I was just going to make it happen.
Yeah.
And I had followed Freya's forgotten the name, Bookshop.
Bookshop by the Sea.
Bookshop by the Sea, that's it. For a little while. I love what she's doing there. A really lovely community based business that she was trying to set up. And I knew that I wanted to do something in photography. I just needed someone to show me what to do. And you came up and I pounced on it straight away, and I went and had a look at your website, and it was all these beautiful, beautiful, beautiful landscapes. And at the time, I've always wanted to, I'm so desperate to go off and have some adventures around the world. This has been a pull since I can remember, and I haven't quite got there yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, so at the time I was looking to set up a blog myself.
Yeah.
And like I said, I really had the pull for travel, and I wanted to do as much horse riding as possible because that's always been my passion. And so it just sort of fitted. And I thought, I need your expertise, because it all comes down to proximity. That's what I've worked out, is if you want to do something, you just find somebody who's a little bit ahead of you. Yeah. And then you follow in their footsteps, and find out how they've done it. Yeah. So that's when I then pounced on you in the shop, because I knew.
You just knew? How did you know?
Because
intuition?
Yeah, it was because I just, because you were the first photographer that I'd come across, and I thought, oh yes, this is what I want to learn how to do. Since then, I've actually, what I've learned from you is that you don't have to actually, just saying that, you need to sort of follow what somebody else is doing.
Yeah.
To a level, but then you've got to then remind yourself, is that really aligning with you? And I think what you taught me, there was definitely a bit of a realization, I suppose, when you just got me to write the words down that that you think is more you, what your own style is. And after I'd finished writing this entire page, I thought, oh no, that isn't my style at all. That's not. I don't actually. And that was such an important thing for me, because I found that actually I shouldn't be trying to emulate, because it really wasn't working at that time, and I didn't know why. Do you see what I'm saying? It was almost like, I don't know, I'm not really feeling this. Yeah. But it was because it just wasn't me. Yeah. And so when I then did that small exercise, it then lit up a little bit of a fire in me, because then once you find your own style, that's where That's where you get the...
Yeah, you start living your truth then, don't you? And that's the most exciting part, because I feel like for you, it's definitely been a process of like self-discovery, hasn't it? In that sense, and that moment was the significant moment for me within the period as well, because it probably came at about the halfway point, didn't it? About month 3, I think it was. And I remember a conversation with you saying about how you felt a little bit unfulfilled by the sunset and the pretty.
Right.
Do you remember?
Yeah. No, I don't.
That was definitely the point when you say, you weren't feeling it. I think that was the point when you'd mentioned about pretty. You didn't want to do pretty anymore.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed that you were honest enough to say that, because that was about the time where I wanted to start thinking about less about the technicals and the settings and all that's boring, right? The fun stuff is in finding you and finding what you want to say to the world through your photos. And that was like a little ding in my head where I just thought, Nat, it wasn't like I ever doubted that you were loving the process of taking photos, but I think there was just something that wasn't you in the photos. It was like you were living, I don't know, maybe feeling like a little bit of an imposter, or like just taking photos that weren't representing who you were. And that was just a brilliant moment. There was 2 or 3 early on really important conversations that I think we had that kind of, we were walking this way and then we just kind of just made a little turn that way, walked that way a little bit, turned again, and then the one when you said that, it was just like, right, handbrake on, 180, let's go.
Yeah.
And that's when you started to look a little bit more, because you even mentioned then that you're actually not even that bothered about taking pictures of the horses at one point then, were you? Which was the initial conversation. But actually it was all of this other stuff that was coming to you, where you were like, little thing twigging in your mind saying, go and do this, go and take that. And I feel like that's what we're all looking for as creatives.
Yeah.
Is those things within us that is our, whether it's like the soul speaking, and it's calling you, saying like, hey, come over this way, this is where you belong. Those feelings of joy and bliss that I guess relate to somewhere within our formative years, within our childhood, or even beyond. I don't know where exactly it comes from, but it is like something is knocking at the door waiting to come out, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that, as creatives, I think is what we need to follow.
Yeah, because it's a reflection of you, ultimately. Because I don't think you can really figure out where it comes from.
No.
But everybody has their own style. Even, when it could be more of the boring end of me.
Yeah, we might say boring, yeah.
But it's the deep, it comes from a deep down part of you, and it's a reflection of the person actually that you are. So the bit that you can't really hide, that's what we were just, talking about, the real you.
Yeah.
Not the bit that you pretend.
Yeah. And it's always in there, and I think for some people it's buried a lot deeper.
Yeah.
But for others, I think it's clear, it's obvious. Maybe.
Well, I think that's why a lot of people who have lost themselves a little bit find it, it's most difficult for them to find what their style is, because it's all they've got lost in their professional demeanour or what they're meant to be to other people.
Yeah, and the way the world shapes for people too as well, where we kind of I don't really feel like we're encouraged to go and find ourselves and live as artists and individuals, but more, you get your education, you follow the education system, you go into uni, then you go and get a job in a big company, and then you live by the company's rules. And I don't really feel like the world is shaped for us to, figure out who we are and learn, what it is that makes us tick. And like you say, could go back to the schools, but I think it's just the world in general, isn't it? Yeah,
and it's funny because it's not a new thing. Human beings have always had the need to create.
Yeah.
Even going back from the Neolithic times, paintings on caves.
Yeah.
And, people have always wanted to, I suppose create. That might be in sculpture form or in paintings and then once the written word came about, people would write and form poetry or stories or told stories, and so people have always sort of made things up, and that's always.
Why do you think we have a desire to create?
I think it's part of an understanding. If you take it back to its basic form.
Yeah.
You know, if you look at the way a child looks at the world, for example, you normally will tell it in a story form.
Yeah.
In order for them to grasp and understand. So I think it's a similar sort of thing.
Yeah.
You know, it's making sense of something that doesn't make an awful lot of sense. If you think about your storytelling.
Yeah.
You know, I'm reading a book about the Greek mythologies at the moment.
Oh, are you?
Yeah. And it's all about how the world was first created,
Yeah.
and how darkness and light, you know, was created, and what
Yeah.
they gave birth to the world, and which was Gaia, and
Yeah.
you know, so it's you know, it's understanding, you know, our place, because I think we have a consciousness.
Yeah, sure.
You know, not a lot of animals do. Although,
I don't know.
I mean, I think more primitive animals possibly.
Yeah.
You know, but certainly when as evolution has progressed, I think, you know, you look at, you know, our dogs, for example, and you know, there's
dogs
meaning,
are
isn't there?
sure.
Yeah, definitely.
But I think everything has it. I think trees do have it too. I was reading something the other day, I can't remember where it was, but there was an argument that it was only, that this belief was only that animals and humans have consciousness. But I definitely think trees have some kind of, you know,
an understanding.
Yeah, there's another book I read called To Speak for the Trees. And an Irish lady performed some experiments on trees in her university years. And she, you know, extracted some chemicals that maybe linked like trees to having thoughts and feelings and dreams as well. She made the comment, maybe they dream as well, which is beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah.
But if you go back to the idea of Gaia, then of course it all plays a part, doesn't it, in this sphere of consciousness?
Yeah, it's I suppose it's first understanding what consciousness is all about, and I do really resent people who tend to sort of part us from the rest of the world. So we
Sure.
have it, we have an understanding,
Yeah,
we
yeah.
have a consciousness, but others don't.
Yeah.
And we talk about the animal world as being other,
Yeah.
and we're not a part of that, and that's absolutely rubbish. We are.
That may be rooted in
absolutely
Christianity.
part
I know Christians kind of believe about the, you know, having dominion and reign over the.
I don't know if it's just Christianity. I think that certainly where you're looking at religions where there's more than one, so you Greek mythologies where you have several gods and you have several goddesses and you have that in paganism as well.
Yeah.
They seem to be, although I think with Greek in particular, they seem to be really quite heavy-handed. Paganism, I suppose it depends on what form, but if you look at sort of, you know, the religion, the pagan religion that was rooted in particularly in Northern Europe, before Christianity, it was very much about being in tune. You know, it's a bit like is it the Light Festival?
Right.
That takes part around autumn. So sort of, I think Halloween replaced it. I don't know if that is Samhain, but that's what it's called. The pagan version of Halloween. But specifically the Light Festival, it's all about, because they know that the light's starting to dim, because of course the days become shorter. So the idea of the Light Festival was to try and appease a god, to ask that god to then return next spring, because of course that's when all the crops were grown and food's grown and all the rest of it, you know. So it's about, those kind of religions tend to be much more in tune with nature.
Yeah, sure.
But I think, I've said it before, we had a conversation before about religion, is that when you have a religion where there's just one God,
Oh yeah.
it's usually been brought about because it's about somebody else's proximity to that one God.
Yeah,
so
sure.
when you have that proximity to that one God,
Hierarchical,
then
yeah.
that's it, then you're in proximity to power.
Yeah.
So, you know, this is why a lot of things are born from, you know, so powers born from religion, you know,
Sure.
they're both together, and politics are usually brought into that kind of dynamic as well.
Kind of goes against everything I'm believing in at this stage of my life, with photographing nature and kind of weaving in messages of that interconnectedness, and we're all one, and you know, when we walk into a woodland, we are then the woodland, and great conversation with Mark yesterday about that as well. I think you might enjoy that.
Oh, I can't wait to listen
on
to that.
Wednesday, yeah. Because he's photographed woodland primarily, and he made comments about that as well. How, you know, it's like he becomes the woodland.
Yeah.
Maybe then we're all channeling this creativity not through ourselves, but maybe we're just channeling it from, like you say, the consciousness, the collected, whatever Gaia, consciousness, whatever that wants, works through us as human beings. So maybe that's why you've been drawn to create. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it definitely feels, I think for a lot of people, when you're in amongst nature, that you're in a completely different world. But
Sure.
you're not in a physical, you're not, but you are.
Yeah.
You know, because it's such a big step from the stress and the strains of trying to exist in this sort of corporate way of life. Or for me, it was NHS and and the stress that comes with that. And then you step into, you know, nature, and suddenly the other world it almost shrinks.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem to matter so much,
Yeah.
you know.
There certainly are two worlds that seem to exist within where we are, and one is the human-made world society, everything whizzing by. I mean, you saw me in Birmingham, right? How distressed I was.
Yeah.
Living in
like
that world.
Yeah. And then just got off the
My
train.
head was just like, what is this place with all these stimuli? And then we've got nature. I mean, we're all in some ways living in this dualistic, you know, world that relies on one and the other, and it certainly feels like that's what I'm experiencing at this point in life. Maybe one day I'll find this blend and this balance, and I'll find harmony. But
it's very incongruent, isn't it? The two worlds, and so it's very hard to sort of navigate how they sort of fit together.
Yeah.
You know.
Do you? I mean, you have a real interest in like history and like spirituality, all kinds of stuff, don't you? Do you find that you're going to, you know, explore ways to weave them into work at any point, into photographs or, you know, any other form of writing, like you said about blogs?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I am definitely, I've heard several names for people like me. Multi-potential light was a recent one, or multi-passionate, and somebody that can't quite fix on one thing. Yeah. And so what I like to do sometimes, I find myself doing, is trying to draw other passions in with, because I think that's a mindset thing. I think that's more of the thing that we learn from school, that you're supposed to choose one thing, aren't you?
Yeah, sure.
And so you feel a little bit as if you're cheating on another passion of yours. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Is that like, you know, if you've got several different ones, you know, and I do, and I find that that pulls up a lot of guilt, you know, if I've got more than.
Yeah.
But it's the way my mind works. I you know, somebody needs an awful lot of stimulation. I think, you know.
Yeah.
So I have to have, almost juggle things, and that's how I function.
And I'm the same as you. There's always a lot going on in my world. You know, living in bodybuilding, running all these fitness goals, and then I've got my creativity, my writing, and interest in spirituality, religion in some ways, but not to a fixed point. There's all these things that I love to explore. I think it comes with being curious, doesn't it?
Yes.
And what I found with the camera, it's like this thing of going like this and just weaving everything into this one, like, you know, laser focus to weave it all in together into this creativity. Because even when I write, you've read a few of my articles, haven't you? A lot of it is obviously nature is the umbrella, isn't it? But then there's all of these avenues that weave in and out, and maybe a bit of something you can take from that with your own creativity as well now, that you don't necessarily need to feel like you know, you have to be one and follow just photography, because photography is everything. It's the way you live, isn't it? It's the way you see the world. I think in the past 2 interviews I brought up an Ansel Adams quote, which is about you know, you bring to the act of photography all of the movies you've seen, all of the books you've read, people you've loved, and that's a beautiful approach to it, I think, to, you know, to just accept that life is going into your photography. Your human life is. All of your experience.
It's definitely more of a vehicle, and I think that's what has attracted me to it, because it involves, you can pull in other things that you're passionate about, you know, and then you can chop and change it when you're bored.
Yeah.
I don't think moving forward now, oh god, another term I hate, but you know, looking into the future, I don't think I could stick at one thing, you know. So I couldn't see myself as just being wildlife or
and I love that.
And I think that's why I kind of changed my mind on horses. It's like, well, that could be a separate thing. It's always going to be a passion, absolutely, but I don't necessarily have to sort of put it into everything. But yeah, it's you know, that's certainly why I got, you know, attracted to, because it's an opportunity that you can use it for lots of different. You can have a go at this, have a go at that, and you can pull in other things that you're interested in.
Yeah, I think the opportunities are endless, and it is going to be incredible now to watch your progress, I think, as you move on. And have this episode as an anchor for you, because I think it was last month when I thought about the podcast, I thought how much I'd love to have been interviewed right at the start, for me to look back on now and think, wow, what has happened in that time.
Yeah.
You know, 5 years of creativity is, like you said, you feel like a lot's happened in the past 6 months, don't you?
I'm quite, because that's another thing about me, is that I'm a bit of a planner.
Yeah.
And I've really got to stop doing that.
Yeah.
Because I just think I've got to be a little bit more open, and that's definitely a lesson that I've learned over the last year, that I've really got to stop thinking that I've got to have everything all planned out, because I think that in the back of my mind I've got that fear of what's not going to happen unless, and in actual fact, when you just let go and you just leave things open, that's when things tend to get invited into your life, you know.
I feel like that's when you're able to feel and be, and that's what guides you then, isn't it? That stillness and silence, and not necessarily, you know, you could be so like, I need to go here, I need to go here, I need to go here. But if you're so, you know, I mean, look, if we just focus on one tree here, for example, I mean, how much else are we excluding from the viewfinder then? And I mean, I've been definitely guilty of doing it as well with my nature photography over the past 5 years, where I get so fixed on, and there was a couple of examples in a photo shoot earlier this week where I'd gone there with this preconception, this idea of what photograph I wanted to create, and then I created it when I first got there, and then I was like, oh,
what do I do now?
What do I do now? The conditions are still amazing, you know, the light's great, the conditions are great, and then it was like almost like these chains were off, and I was just like, just explore now and go and feel your way around the landscape, and I think that's when the truth comes out a lot of the time in us, when we follow the feelings. And forget that, I mean, remember that there are no chains binding us anymore. Which is something I feel like humans have a guilty pleasure of, you know, feeling like we're restricted and bound.
Yeah, definitely. I think that, but I think that's a thing that's learned behaviour. You know, we're trained to, you know, think like that. I can always remember I was watching some sort of documentary, and they'd rescued these lions from a circus, and these cats, these tigers, have been stuck in this trailer or cage all their lives. And although they were now free in this reservation, they would walk up and down at the same width and length of the trailer. And that always strikes me, because I see, you know, for example, you'd have nurses who could retire on a really good pension, and they would come back, they'd retire, and then they would return, because it's almost like they needed the structure or the restriction. I'm not sure which one. And that would always go through my mind. It's like, but you're free now, so why not make the most of it? And I think that comes from sometimes in a lot of us we have that to some extent.
Yeah, sure. I feel like for me that definitely happened, and then I filled that void. It's like a void. Then I just filled with creativity instead, and maybe that's what humans are when they're just left. You know, maybe we're just creative beings because what else is there to do but to make something in the world?
Yeah.
Interesting.
And it's a shame because in our world in particular, despite the fact that it's clearly a human need, it's almost seen as a luxury, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, it's
only the privileged.
Yeah, only the privileged get it, or you should be working.
Yeah.
Why are you doing that when you could be actually doing something useful?
Yeah.
You know.
And why is this not work? You know, why is creating not? Why can it not be work?
Well, the thing is creativity. If you think of everything in the world that we now enjoy, it's been born from a creative mind.
Yeah.
It's because somebody's been allowed and given the time to think in a different way.
Yeah.
And create, you know.
And what would the world be without it? I mean, if we had no music, no art, no, I don't know, what else?
Well,
dancing, you know, anything was creative. There's a lot of other things that
stories,
storytelling, sure. Then I think we'd go crazy.
Well, what would we be? We would just be robots. And
there'd be nobody admiring the beauty and teaching people, you know, this is what we should appreciate in life.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love that line. There's a line in there. Have you read The Colour Purple?
No. Do I need to make a note of this?
Oh, it's such a beautiful book. And in one of the last few pages, it's the only line I can remember from it, but one of the characters says, "I think it pisses God off when somebody walks past a field full of purple flowers and doesn't bother to turn their head." You know, and I just remember, you know, when sometimes you read something and then you put the book down because it's such a I need time to reflect on that. Yeah, that's beautiful. And it always stuck with me. It's like, you know, why don't people just stop and just appreciate?
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, we've been in such a better place if people just appreciated, you know, what we've got instead of chasing things that are just meaningless.
Sure. And just that endless cycle of go, chase. Yeah. Living in the ego. I need this. I want this.
Yeah.
Let's just be a little bit more. Make space for some creativity.
Yeah, and just appreciate what we have. That's the thing that we miss entirely. We already have it, so it's like you don't want something that you already have.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing. It's this almost like an addiction to the want.
Yeah.
And need to have. You know.
Filling the voids. So, in terms of creativity, where do you think you're kind of going to be heading in the next few months? Have you got any ideas?
Yeah, I definitely want to create this into a career, and I'd like it to use it to support myself.
Yeah.
Because I've just really fallen in love with it. But like I said, I'm such a chopper and changer, and I change my mind.
Yeah.
I am looking forward. I know I said earlier that I'm not looking forward to the winter or living through the winter. But I'm really looking forward to actually creating some art.
Yeah.
So I'm waiting for the bare trees. And,
sure. Do you feel like you might pursue a little bit of nature and landscape?
Definitely. I mean, I that's the thing. I just don't want to be sort of boxed into one thing. Because it's just the way my mind works. I need to. As soon as I've done it, I need something else, and then once I've done that, and then sometimes I go back, you know.
Yeah.
So definitely, particularly during the winter months, I've got some really good ideas, and I'd love to do some more wildlife. I've definitely set my mind on that. I've been wittering on about it for so long, but haven't actually got down to it. But I think in the winter months, I'd really like to go and see if I can find some foxes or or just some little birds. It doesn't have to be anything great and amazing. But just sort of, like you said, appreciating what's there. You know?
It's a real fun part of your journey now, I think.
Yeah, and also portrait photography.
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately, what I'd like to do is get on the road at one time and just keep snipping and taking photos and capturing things. And you know, I think I've spoken to before, like capturing portrait photography, but I don't want just pretty people.
Yeah.
And what I'm trying to capture is the person.
Yeah. Which you did in that one photograph of the guy in
in
Birmingham.
Yeah,
You captured him, didn't you?
a really lovely guy, so it was quite easy to capture him.
He just had a real, you know,
Softness in
natural
the eyes.
softness in his eyes, and he's just showing as himself, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Whereas the builder, who knows, but wasn't he? Maybe not quite himself. I don't know what he was hiding.
But he was overcompensating for
think so.
feeling awkward, wasn't he?
So it's going to be interesting to see your portrait stuff developing now. After seeing that one, because I feel like that reflected a bit of you in it.
Yeah, it's funny that, I mean, I didn't think of that at the time, but I know that was something that you mentioned, and I totally agree that people are reflecting you shape each other's responses, don't you?
Yeah.
So when you're talking to somebody and you're inviting them in, I suppose, then they're responding in a particular way.
Exactly.
So you're reflecting each other. Portrait photography, I think, is just something that's really grabbed my imagination.
Yeah, and I feel like you've got a real understanding of human psychology, which will carry you quite well with portrait photography.
Yeah, I think that. I think we both have that. You know, I think that having a tricky childhood when you're having to really be mindful about the adults around you makes you very. In fact, I know it makes you very good at looking at those little micro changes in people's expressions and.
What do you mean? In fact, I know. Is that from working with?
From the research. Yeah, that's what the research shows. Is that
what does it?
That children who live in abusive households, for example, get very good at picking up on where the mood changes and where those are full, so that they can either get out of the way, or they can change their behaviour. So you get very good.
So it's like hypervigilance, right?
Yes, that's exactly it. Yeah, you get very hyper, and that stays with you. And I think that it's those early lessons. You know, as much as they were horrible to have gained, you get very. Yeah. I think that it's something that I'm particularly good at, is picking up on what people really feel and think. You know.
I think we both have, and it's something I was going to mention to you before when you were talking about the events that you're not looking back and thinking, I wish I hadn't have done that, and I wish I'd have changed this, or it's like these things have happened, and it's how are you going to use these negative experiences, because I don't really believe them to be negative anymore. They're just experiences, and they can take you wherever you want them to take you. I mean, you can sit and dwell on them and be a victim and think, well, me, this is all so bad. But then actually, I think it's building up an understanding of, what that's shaped you into today. Yeah. And how those experiences, that adversity, has maybe ingrained some, I call them superpowers. I think having that understanding of humans and natural empathy and just awareness, body language, reading body language to know when to go into a conversation, when to maybe take a step back. Yeah. And I've noticed it over the past few episodes, actually, the differences in the way I've had to present myself to find different angles, and that wouldn't have been possible without those negative adverse experiences, right? Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, I definitely am not a woe type, and in fact, it's something that is a bit of a bugbear with me when I see that, and you think, but yes, I know that you can make a positive out of it, as much as, not for everybody, but sometimes you think you've got to sort of, at some point, and that's another conscious decision I remember in my life, where I thought I can either go one way and let it drag you down, or you can actually spin on its head and use that as a platform to get better. Yeah. And I remember thinking quite clearly, I'm going to make myself my own project. You know? And despite what everyone might think or expect, I'm actually going to surprise everybody. Yeah. So I do remember that. And yes, I think you also, having a bit of a crap childhood, it gives you a more of an understanding of when things are really good. Yeah. Because you have the contrast of it being really grey and bleak and horrible. Sure.
so you have that counterbalance and you have that understanding of, I'm going to make this moment, this moment is great, and I'm really going to just be in the moment for a second and really enjoy
appreciate it for what it is, because I know the flip side is also true. Yeah, and I don't know that everybody has that awareness and understanding, and also maybe people who haven't, experienced that side of life, maybe later on in life, then the struggles maybe catch up with them as well. So I mean, I'm grateful for all of my things that have shaped me, and I can tell that you are too, and I'm excited to see where, your
how that reflects in
your
I'm
work.
really interested as well to see how that goes, because I remember one of the things they said in the shop.
I said, or you said?
No, somebody.
Oh, right.
I can't remember. One of the other people that were there was, you definitely have a style. And he stopped and said, "Oh, right. Well, could you tell me more about that? How you see my paintings and what style you think I have? Explain that to me." Because that was actually news to you, clearly, how somebody else saw your style.
Sure, yeah. Do you remember what they said?
No, I'm sorry, I can't really, because that sort of struck me as, isn't that interesting that you can't see your style?
Yeah, well, I think I could, but I think you know me well enough now. You mentioned that I always love to hear. I get you to expand when you say something, and I'm like, what do you mean? I just love other people's angle on things, because it's a way that I just build my own understanding. If I was to stay fixed in my own head and just understand things from my perspective, there's no growth, is there?
No.
Everything is a case of, please tell me more. I just,
Well, we're strange beings, aren't we? Because, you said earlier, that that people don't really know you, the real you, very often. But sometimes you don't either know the real you. And sometimes somebody can point something out about you and you think, oh my God, you're absolutely right. And I had, I didn't recognise that in myself.
Sure. Fascinating, isn't it?
It is fascinating,
I think we're getting somewhere with this conversation with you, actually, in the human psychology element, and how that's going to ingrain itself into your work in the future.
Yeah. I mean, in my mind, I would love to go off, I don't know, anywhere. Off around the world, and I know that I want to capture people.
I definitely think there are, unlimited avenues for something like that, to be honest. And even if there's not, you just make your own, don't you? Carve your own path out and make this life what you want. You certainly have been doing that with getting to know people in the right places and throwing out emails left, right and centre to people, so I think you're well on the way.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there is definitely something to be said, if people are a little bit confused in terms of how they get started, if they wanted to make the leap because they're not happy, and they know that they want to change but they're not sure how to go about that. The best step is to find somebody who's doing exactly what you'd really like to do. And then either, contact them or follow them or take some courses, courses that are in that and follow. Sometimes I've looked up, certain photographers and found out what their background is, did they train, what they did, how they got there, and then think, right, okay, well, if that's how they did it, then maybe I could look into, following that route somewhat, so. And
just take a chance, right?
Yeah.
Reach out and try.
Yeah.
And I think the key is to just go and do it, right?
Yeah.
To go and take the pictures.
Yeah.
Like, you've learnt the most lessons when you've actually gone out and taken pictures and maybe screwed up.
Oh,
there was a time where you're really hard on yourself.
Yes.
Do you remember?
Yes. Yeah.
In the forest.
Yes. Yeah.
And it actually gave us the most to look back on and feedback and say, well, why did that happen? What can we do next time that's different? Yeah,
that is definitely something that I have struggled with, is that there is this sort of perfectionism, and it's such a ball and chain.
Yeah.
Because you've got to be wrong, because it's only when you're wrong when you learn the lesson.
Yeah.
And so shying away from the mistakes is actually completely wrong, but it's such a natural, I can't even look at it, because it's so bad.
Yeah.
That's definitely is a lesson that I've had to
Yeah.
learn and embrace the mistakes. But then I've heard fantastic photographers who have said, "Oh my God, I've got it. You should see the bummers that
Oh, yeah.
I've produced," and that's made me feel much better.
Yeah. Our mistakes are nothing in the grand scheme of things, are they?
Well, yeah.
I think we're punished a lot, aren't we, for mistakes?
Yes.
In younger years and school and just
Not
mistakes.
wanting to raise your hand just in case you get the question
Yeah,
wrong.
and you look stupid and you're laughed at and shamed. But actually, now we're adults.
Yeah.
Moments like that teach us actually that mistakes are to be embraced, or failures
Yeah.
are to be embraced, because they will send us along the right path.
It's often when you make the mistake is when you're trying.
Yeah,
If you're not making mistakes, you're not really pushing against your limitations.
exactly. Yeah,
Because you've got to find where your limitations are to find where your next step is.
yeah,
I need to work on this bit because I'm really weak here.
yeah.
And very often we'll shy away from the bit that we find difficult.
And a lot of the time, exactly. Yeah, we need to go towards them. It's like the fear as well, isn't it? We've got to go to where the fear is,
Yeah,
and that's where the growth happens.
exactly. Yes.
So, I think we're gonna wrap it up there for this episode. I'm sure there'll be a time soon when you'll be back on. 'Cause,
Oh yeah,
like,
definitely.
we could talk for ages, can't we, me and you?
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
Similar lives and similar kind of paths now as well.
Mm-hmm.
Things that have led us onto creativity and trying to
yeah.
make a difference in the world. So
Yeah, definitely. And I think that there is certainly a feeling of crossing the path with the right person at the right
sure.
time. So yeah.
And I'm glad we did, because this has been a beautiful process, and this is the kind of cherry on the top now, is to be able to put this interview together and leave it there as a little anchor for you.
Yeah, I'll be so interested to come back to it.
Yeah.
In the future, and
Yeah.
I'm a little bit further along the journey.
Well, until then, we'll say goodbye to everybody. So thank you for watching.
Thank you.
So, ladies and gents, thank you very much for tuning in once again. I hope you enjoyed this conversation and that it brought a lot of value to you. I'm sure that there were some nuggets in there for you to enjoy, and hopefully it's helped you to learn and to grow and to understand a little bit more about our minds and creativity and photography. I'd like to thank Natalie for coming on and bringing her empathy and understanding of me and allowing me to talk and open up a little bit as well. As I said, we always have the most interesting conversations, and I'm glad that we could take you along for this one. So hope you'll join me again next week. I plan to bring you a solo episode, and then I've got a couple of really exciting guests lined up. So ladies and gents, thanks once again, and I'll speak to you soon.